The buzzing of Charlie's phone jolted me awake. I reached over to silence it, my fingers fumbling in the darkness. As I picked it up, the screen lit up with a message that made my heart stop. "Can't wait to see you tomorrow, baby. Last night was amazing." The text was from someone named Ava. I blinked, convinced I was still dreaming, but as I scrolled up, my stomach twisted into knots. There were dozens of messages, each more intimate than the last. "Charlie?" I whispered, turning to face my husband of 8 years. He stirred but didn't wake up. I slipped out of bed, phone clutched to my chest, and made my way to the kitchen. My hands shook as I poured myself a glass of water, spilling some on the counter. "Beck, what are you doing up?" Charlie's voice startled me. He stood in the doorway, hair tousled from sleep. I held up his phone. "Who's Ava?" His face paled, then hardened. "Why are you going through my phone?" "I wasn't." It buzzed, and I trailed off, realizing how weak it sounded. "That doesn't matter. Who is she, Charlie?" He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "It's not what you think." "Really? Because I think you're cheating on me." My voice cracked, but I held his gaze. Charlie's shoulders slumped. "I didn't want you to find out like this." The room spun. I gripped the counter to steady myself. "So it's true?" He nodded, not meeting my eyes. "I'm sorry, Beck. I didn't mean for it to happen. How long?" I managed to choke out. 6 months. 6 months. Half a year of lies, of betrayal. I thought back to all the late nights at work, the sudden business trips. How could I have been so blind? "Do you love her?" The question slipped out before I could stop it. Charlie hesitated, and in that moment, I knew. "I think I do," he whispered. The glass slipped from my hand, shattering on the tile floor. Neither of us moved to clean it up. "I want you out," I said, surprised by the steadiness in my voice. "Beck, come on, let's talk about this." I shook my head. "There's nothing to talk about. You made your choice." "Where am I supposed to go?" A bitter laugh escaped me. "I'm sure Ava would be happy to take you in." Charlie's face hardened. "Fine, I'll pack a bag." As he turned to leave, a thought struck me. "Wait, your mother, does she know?" He paused in the doorway. "Yeah, she does. She's the one who introduced us." The betrayal cut deeper than I thought possible. Karen, my mother-in-law, had always been cold towards me, but this was a whole new level of cruelty. "Get out," I whispered. "Now." Charlie disappeared into the bedroom. I heard drawers opening and closing, zippers being pulled. 10 minutes later, he emerged with a duffel bag. "I'll come back for the rest of my stuff later," he said, not quite meeting my eyes. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. As the front door closed behind him, the reality of the situation crashed over me. I was alone. The life I thought I had, the future I'd planned, it was all gone. I sank to the floor, careful to avoid the broken glass. Tears streamed down my face as I clutched Charlie's phone, still open to those damning messages. A new text from Ava popped up. "Everything okay? You're usually up by now." My fingers hovered over the keyboard. In that moment, I made a decision. This wasn't the end. It was just the beginning. I typed out a reply. "Everything's fine. See you soon." Then I deleted the conversation and turned off the phone. I had work to do. I hadn't slept in days. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Charlie with her. Ava. The name tasted bitter on my tongue. "Miss Thompson?" A deep voice jolted me from my thoughts. I looked up to see a man in his 50s, salt and pepper hair, and kind eyes that had seen too much. "I'm Jack Reeves, the private investigator you contacted." I nodded, gesturing for him to sit. We were in a small cafe far from my usual haunts. I didn't want to risk running into anyone I knew. "What can you tell me about my husband?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Jack pulled out a manila folder. "Are you sure you want to see this, Miss Thompson? Sometimes ignorance is bliss." I steeled myself. "I need to know everything." He sighed, opening the folder. "Your husband has been spending a significant amount of time with a young woman named Ava Collins. They meet 3 to 4 times a week, usually at her apartment or at this hotel." He slid a photo across the table. My breath caught. There was Charlie, arm around a stunning blonde, entering a high-end hotel. They looked happy. "There's more," Jack said gently. "They've been seen shopping together, dining at expensive restaurants, and—" He hesitated. "And what?" I pressed. "They visited a jewelry store last week. Mr. Thompson purchased a ring." The world tilted on its axis. A ring. Charlie was going to propose to her. "Miss Thompson, are you all right?" I nodded mechanically, unable to speak. Jack continued. his voice a distant buzz as he detailed Charlie's betrayal. Dinner dates, weekend getaways, all while I sat at home, wondering why my husband was growing distant. "There's one more thing," Jack said, pulling out another photo. "This woman has been seen with them several times," I gasped. It was Karen, Charlie's mother. She was laughing, arm linked with Ava's, as they exited a boutique. "They seem quite close," Jack observed. A hysterical laugh bubbled up in my throat. "Of course they are. Karen never liked me. She probably thinks Ava is the daughter-in-law she always wanted." Jack's eyes softened with sympathy. "I'm sorry, Miss Thompson. I know this must be difficult." I shook my head, anger replacing the shock. "No, I'm glad I know. Thank you, Mr. Reeves." As I left the cafe, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Karen. "Rebecca, dear, we need to talk. Come over for tea this afternoon?" My fingers hovered over the keypad. Part of me wanted to confront her, to scream and rage about her betrayal. But a cooler, more calculated part of me held back. Knowledge was power, and right now I had the upper hand. "Of course, Karen. See you at 3, I replied. I spent the next few hours in a daze, poring over the photos and information Jack had given me. Each new detail was a knife to my heart, but I forced myself to memorize everything. If I was going to face Karen, I needed to be prepared. At precisely 3 p.m., I rang Karen's doorbell. She answered with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Rebecca, dear, come in. I've just made a fresh pot of Earl Grey." I followed her into the living room, taking in the familiar surroundings. How many times had I sat here trying to win her approval? And all along she'd been plotting behind my back. "So," Karen said, pouring tea with steady hands, "I suppose we should discuss the elephant in the room." I raised an eyebrow. "Which elephant would that be, Karen?" "Charlie's affair, or your part in it?" She had the grace to look startled. "You know?" "I know everything," I said, my voice cold. "I know about Ava, I know about the ring, and I know you've been playing happy families with them while stabbing me in the back." Karen set down her teacup with a clatter. "Now, Rebecca, let's not be dramatic. Charlie and Ava? They're in love. Sometimes these things happen. It's no one's fault." I leaned forward, my eyes locked on hers. "No one's fault?" "You introduced them, Karen. You encouraged this." She had the audacity to look offended. "I only want what's best for my son. And let's be honest, dear, you two haven't been happy for a long time. This is for the best." As I stared at her, something inside me snapped. I stood up, my hands shaking. "For the best? You have no idea what you've done, Karen, but you will. I promise you that." I turned and walked out, leaving her sputtering behind me. As I got into my car, my phone buzzed again. It was Charlie. "We need to talk," his message read. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for the battle ahead. "Yes," I typed back, "we certainly do." I stood outside our house, no, Charlie's house now, my heart pounding. The folder of evidence from Jack Reeves felt heavy in my hands. I took a deep breath and rang the doorbell. Charlie opened the door, his face a mask of neutrality. "Rebecca, come in." I stepped inside, the familiar scent of our home, my former home, washing over me. Charlie led me to the living room, where I noticed subtle changes. Ava's touch, no doubt. "So," Charlie said, sitting across from me, "you wanted to talk." I nodded, my throat tight. "I know everything, Charlie. About Ava, about your mother's involvement, all of it." He didn't even have the decency to look surprised. "I see. And how do you feel about that?" His casual tone ignited a fire in me. I slammed the folder on the coffee table. "How do I feel? Are you serious, Charlie? You've been cheating on me for months, and you're asking how I feel." Charlie leaned back, unfazed. "Look, Rebecca, I didn't want it to happen this way, but you and I both know our marriage has been over for a long time." "Over?" I echoed, incredulous. "We were trying for a baby, Charlie. We were planning our future." He shook his head. "No, you were planning a future. I was existing. With Ava, I feel alive again." Each word was a dagger to my heart. "So that's it? 8 years of marriage, and you're just throwing it away?" "I want a divorce, Rebecca," Charlie said, his voice eerily calm. "I think it's best for both of us." The room spun. I gripped the armrest, trying to steady myself. "Both of us? Or just you and your new family?" Charlie's eyes flashed with anger for the first time. "Don't bring my mother into this. She only wants what's best for me." I laughed bitterly. "Oh, I'm sure she does, and I'm sure Ava is everything she ever wanted in a daughter-in-law, right?" "Leave Ava out of this," Charlie snapped. "This is between you and me." "Is it?" I countered. Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you, Ava, and your mother have been quite the team. Charlie stood up abruptly. I'm not going to sit here and be attacked. I've made my decision, Rebecca. I want a divorce, and I hope we can handle this like adults. Something in me snapped. I rose to face him, my voice low and dangerous. Like adults? You've been sneaking around behind my back, lying to my face, and now you want to handle this like adults? What do you want from me? Charlie shouted, his composure finally cracking. An apology? Fine. I'm sorry I fell out of love with you. I'm sorry I found happiness with someone else. Is that what you want to hear? Tears stung my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. What I want is for you to look me in the eye and tell me why. Why wasn't I enough? Why couldn't you just talk to me instead of betraying me? Charlie's shoulders sagged. I don't know, Rebecca. I couldn't do it anymore. The pressure, the disappointment every month when you weren't pregnant, it was killing me. His words hit me like a physical blow. So this is my fault because I couldn't give you a child? That's not what I... Get out, I whispered. Charlie blinked. What? Get out! I screamed, grabbing the nearest object, a framed photo of our wedding day, and hurling it at him. It shattered against the wall as Charlie ducked. Rebecca, calm down. No, you don't get to tell me to calm down, I seethed. You want a divorce? Fine, but don't you dare try to pin this on me. You're the one who broke us, Charlie. You and your precious Ava and your interfering mother. Charlie's face hardened. Fine. I'll have my lawyer contact you. I hope you'll be more reasonable then. As he stormed out, slamming the door behind him, I collapsed onto the couch. The house felt cavernous, echoing with the ghosts of our shattered marriage. My phone buzzed. A text from Karen. I heard you spoke with Charlie. Let's meet and discuss this civilly. I stared at the message, a cold determination settling over me. They thought they had won, that I would just roll over and accept defeat. They had no idea what was coming. I sat in the sterile waiting room of Dr. Patel's office, my hands trembling as I flipped through an outdated magazine. The familiar scent of disinfectant and anxiety filled my nostrils. How many times had I been here over the past few years, hoping for good news? Mrs. Thompson? The nurse called, her smile sympathetic. I followed her to the examination room, my heart pounding. Dr. Patel entered, her kind eyes meeting mine. Rebecca, how are you doing? I tried to smile, but it felt more like a grimace. I've been better, Dr. Patel. She nodded, glancing at my chart. I see you're here for your annual checkup. Any concerns you'd like to discuss? The words tumbled out before I could stop them. My husband left me. He says it's because I couldn't give him a child. Dr. Patel's face softened. Rebecca, I'm so sorry. You know that's not true, right? Infertility is a complex issue, and it's never just one person's fault. I nodded, tears stinging my eyes. I know, but maybe if I had tried harder, done more. Stop right there, Dr. Patel said firmly. You've done everything possible. The treatments, the lifestyle changes, the endless appointments. You've been an exemplary patient. Her words were meant to comfort, but they only twisted the knife deeper. Then why? I whispered. Why couldn't I just get pregnant? Dr. Patel sighed, sitting next to me. Sometimes there's no clear answer, but Rebecca, your worth isn't tied to your ability to conceive. You are so much more than that. I wiped my eyes, trying to regain composure. I feel like I've failed. As a wife, as a woman. You haven't failed anyone, Dr. Patel insisted. Now let's do your exam, and then we can discuss next steps, okay? I nodded, going through the motions of the examination. As Dr. Patel worked, my mind wandered to Charlie. Was he with Ava now? Were they already planning the family I couldn't give him? Rebecca? Dr. Patel's voice snapped me back to reality. I'd like to run a few additional tests. Is that all right? I frowned. Is something wrong? Not necessarily, she said carefully. I just want to be thorough. The next hour was a blur of blood draws and ultrasounds. By the time I was back in the examination room, my nerves were frayed. Dr. Patel returned, her expression unreadable. Rebecca, I have some news. My heart dropped. What is it? Is it cancer? Am I... You're pregnant, Dr. Patel interrupted. The world stopped. What? You're about 6 weeks along, she continued, her voice seeming to come from far away. The ultrasound confirmed it. Rebecca? Are you okay? Pregnant. The word echoed in my head, a cruel joke after years of disappointment. How? I managed to choke out. Dr. Patel smiled gently. Sometimes these things happen when we least expect them. Your body might have finally responded to the treatments, or it could just be one of those miracles we can't explain. A miracle. The baby I had longed for, arriving just as my marriage crumbled. The irony was almost too much to bear. "What do you want to do?" Dr. Patel asked softly. The question jolted me back to reality. What did I want to do? Charlie's words echoed in my mind. The pressure, the disappointment every month when you weren't pregnant. It was killing me. Anger flared in my chest, hot and fierce. He had given up on us, on our dream, and now, when I finally had what we'd both wanted for so long, he was gone. "I want to keep it," I said, my voice stronger than I felt. "This is my baby, Dr. Patel. Mine." She nodded, squeezing my hand. "We'll take good care of both of you, Rebecca. You're not alone in this." As I left the office, my hand resting protectively on my still flat stomach, my phone buzzed. A text from Charlie. "My lawyer will be in touch about the divorce proceedings. I hope we can keep this civil." I stared at the message, a new resolve hardening within me. Civil? Oh, I'd show him civil. He wanted a divorce? Fine, but he had no idea what was coming. This baby was mine, and I would fight with everything I had to protect it. From Charlie, from Karen, from anyone who tried to hurt us. They thought they could discard me, replace me. They were about to learn just how wrong they were. The days after learning about my pregnancy blurred together in a haze of conflicting emotions. Joy battled with despair, hope with resentment. I found myself standing in front of the full-length mirror, scrutinizing my body for any signs of change. "You're in there," I whispered, placing a hand on my still flat stomach. "And I promise I'll protect you." But as the initial shock wore off, the weight of my new reality crashed down on me. I was going to be a single mother, raising a child in the wreckage of my failed marriage. The thought was overwhelming. I reached for the phone, my finger hovering over Charlie's number. Should I tell him? Did he deserve to know? Before I could decide, a wave of nausea hit me. I barely made it to the bathroom, retching violently. As I sat on the cold tile floor, tears streaming down my face, I heard my phone ping. It was a text from Karen. "Charlie tells me you're being difficult about the divorce. Don't make this harder than it needs to be, dear." Anger surged through me. Difficult? They had no idea. In a moment of weakness, I found myself in the kitchen, raiding the pantry. I tore into a bag of chips, then a box of cookies, barely tasting anything as I shoved food into my mouth. The temporary comfort of fullness did little to ease the ache in my heart. Hours passed, and I remained on the kitchen floor, surrounded by empty wrappers and self-loathing. What kind of mother would I be if I couldn't even take care of myself? A knock at the door startled me from my spiral. I considered ignoring it, but the knocking persisted. "Rebecca? It's Sarah. Please open up." Sarah, my best friend since college. I'd been avoiding her calls, too ashamed to face anyone. But now, hearing the concern in her voice, I dragged myself to the door. "Oh, honey?" Sarah gasped when she saw me. Without a word, she enveloped me in a hug. I broke down, sobbing into her shoulder. Between hiccups, I told her everything. The affair, the pregnancy, my fears. Sarah listened, her face a mix of shock and sympathy. When I finished, she took my hands in hers. "Rebecca, look at me. You are the strongest person I know. You can do this." I shook my head. "I don't know if I can. I'm a mess, Sarah. How can I be a mother when I can barely function?" "One day at a time," she said firmly. "And you're not alone. I'm here, and I'm not going anywhere." As Sarah helped me clean up the kitchen, my phone buzzed again. This time it was an email from Charlie's lawyer, detailing the proposed terms of our divorce. I skimmed the document, my anger growing with each line. They wanted me out of the house within 30 days. They were offering a pittance in alimony, citing my potential to work as justification. "They're trying to leave me with nothing," I whispered, showing Sarah the email. Her eyes narrowed. "Not if we have anything to say about it. Rebecca, it's time to fight back." I looked at her, then down at my stomach. The tiny life growing inside me depended on me now. I couldn't afford to fall apart. "You're right," I said, straightening my shoulders. No more wallowing. No more hiding. I picked up my phone, dialing a number I'd saved but never thought I'd use. "Hello, this is Rebecca Thompson. I need to speak with the best divorce lawyer in the city. It's urgent." As I hung up, a sense of calm washed over me. For the first time in weeks, I felt a glimmer of hope. "What are you going to do?" Sarah asked. I met her gaze, a determined smile on my face. I'm going to take back my life, and I'm going to make damn sure this baby has everything it needs, with or without Charlie. The path ahead was uncertain, filled with legal battles and emotional minefields. But as I placed a protective hand on my stomach, I knew one thing for sure. I was done being a victim. It was time to become a fighter. My hands shook as I smoothed down my blouse, the slight swell of my belly barely noticeable at 12 weeks. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for the confrontation ahead. Charlie had agreed to meet me at his house to discuss the divorce terms. Little did he know I was about to turn his world upside down. The doorbell rang, and I opened it to find Charlie standing there, looking annoyingly composed. "Rebecca," he nodded, stepping inside. "Charlie," I replied, my voice steady despite the storm raging inside me. "Let's sit down. We have a lot to discuss." He followed me to the living room, where my lawyer Amanda was waiting. Charlie's eyebrows shot up. "I thought this was going to be a private conversation." "Oh, it will be?" I assured him. "Amanda is just here to make sure everything's official." Charlie's jaw tightened, but he sat down across from us. "Fine, let's hear your terms." I exchanged a glance with Amanda, who gave me an encouraging nod. It was now or never. First, Charlie," I began, my heart pounding. "I'm pregnant." The color drained from his face. "What? How? When?" "It doesn't matter how or when," I cut him off. "What matters is that this changes everything." Charlie leaned forward, his voice low. Is it mine?" The question stung, but I refused to let him see how much it hurt. "Yes, Charlie, it's yours, the baby you've always wanted, remember?" He ran a hand through his hair, looking shell-shocked. I can't." "You can, and you will," I said firmly. "Now, let's talk about our new arrangement." Amanda pulled out a document, sliding it across the coffee table. "We've prepared a revised divorce agreement, taking into account the child support and alimony adjustments necessitated by Rebecca's pregnancy." Charlie's eyes widened as he skimmed the paper. "This is insane. You can't possibly expect me to agree to this." "Oh, but I do," I said, leaning forward. "You see, Charlie, you don't get to walk away from this. You wanted a child so badly that you were willing to throw away our marriage. Well, congratulations, you're going to be a father." "And what about Ava?" he sputtered. "We're planning a life together. We can't just—" "I don't care about your plans with Ava," I interrupted, my voice ice-cold. "This is about our child, a child who deserves every opportunity, every advantage. And you're going to provide that whether you like it or not." Charlie stood up abruptly, pacing the room. "This is blackmail? You can't force me to be a father if I don't want to be." "I'm not forcing you to be anything," I replied calmly. "I'm simply ensuring that our child is taken care of financially. Whether you choose to be involved is up to you." He whirled on me, his face contorted with anger. "And what about my mother? You can't keep her from her grandchild." I stood up, matching his intensity. "Watch me. Karen lost any right to be in this child's life when she conspired behind my back. She's as much to blame for this mess as you are." "You vindictive bitch," Charlie hissed. "You won't get away with this." Amanda cleared her throat. "Mr. Thompson, I'd advise you to watch your language. Everything said here can be used in court." Charlie deflated, sinking back into his chair. "I need time to think, to process all this." "You have 48 hours, I said, my voice unwavering. "After that, we move forward with or without your cooperation." As Charlie stumbled out of the house, looking defeated, a mix of emotions washed over me. Triumph, fear, uncertainty, they all swirled together, making me dizzy. Amanda squeezed my shoulder. "You did well, Rebecca. Are you okay?" I nodded, placing a hand on my stomach. "I have to be, for both of us." As I watched Charlie's car disappear down the street, I knew the real battle was just beginning. But for the first time in months, I felt powerful. I was no longer the victim in this story. I was the author of my own destiny, and I would write a happy ending for my child, no matter what it took. The ink on the divorce papers had barely dried when my phone rang. Karen's name flashed on the screen, sending a jolt of anxiety through me. I hesitated, then answered. "Rebecca, we need to talk." Karen's voice crackled through the speaker, sharp and demanding. I took a deep breath, steeling myself. "About what, Karen?" "Don't play coy with me. Charlie told me everything. How dare you try to keep my grandchild from me?" I gripped the phone tighter, anger rising in my chest. "Your grandchild? The one you didn't think I could have? The one you replaced me for?" "That's ancient history. Karen snapped. "This is about family now. I have rights." "You have nothing," I interrupted, my voice ice cold. "You lost any right to this child when you conspired with Charlie and Ava behind my back." There was a pause, then Karen's tone turned sickeningly sweet. "Rebecca, dear, let's be reasonable. We can work this out, for the baby's sake," I laughed bitterly. "Oh, now you care about the baby? Where was that concern when you were introducing Charlie to his new girlfriend?" "I'm coming over," Karen declared. "We need to discuss this face to face." Before I could protest, she hung up. Panic set in as I realized she was on her way. I paced the living room, one hand on my swollen belly, trying to calm myself. The doorbell rang sooner than I expected. I opened it to find not just Karen, but Charlie and Ava standing there too. "What is this?" I demanded, blocking the doorway. Charlie stepped forward, his face a mask of determination. "We're here to talk about our child, Rebecca. All of us." The audacity of it all hit me like a physical blow. "Our child? There is no our anymore, Charlie. You made sure of that." Ava, looking uncomfortable, tried to speak. "Rebecca, we just want—" "I don't care what you want," I snapped. "None of you have any say in this." Karen pushed past me into the house, the others following. I felt cornered, outnumbered in my own home. "Now let's discuss this civilly," Karen said, sitting down as if she owned the place. "We're proposing shared custody. Charlie and Ava will be the primary caregivers, of course, but you'll have visitation rights." The room spun. I steadied myself against the wall, disbelief and rage warring inside me. "Are you out of your mind? You think you can just waltz in here and take my baby?" Charlie had the decency to look ashamed. "Beck, be reasonable. You can't do this alone. We can provide a stable home. 2 parents." "2 parents?" I exploded. "You mean the man who abandoned me and the woman he cheated with? That's your idea of stability?" Ava flinched, but Karen pressed on. "Think about what's best for the child, Rebecca. A loving family, financial security." "Stop," I shouted, my voice breaking. "Just stop. You don't get to decide what's best. None of you do." I turned to Charlie, tears stinging my eyes. "You didn't want this baby when you thought I couldn't have one. You don't get to want it now." To Ava, "You were fine breaking up a marriage. Don't pretend to care about my child's well-being." And finally, to Karen, "And you orchestrated this whole thing. You don't get to play the doting grandmother now." My hands shook as I pointed to the door. "Get out, all of you, before I call the police." They hesitated, exchanging glances. Karen opened her mouth to argue, but Charlie put a hand on her arm. "Let's go, Mom. We'll handle this through the lawyers." As they filed out, Charlie paused in the doorway. "This isn't over, Rebecca. That's my child, too." I slammed the door behind them, sliding down to the floor as sobs racked my body. My hand cradled my belly protectively. "It's okay, little one," I whispered through tears. "Mommy's here, and I'm not going anywhere." As the adrenaline faded, fear set in. They weren't going to give up. This was just the beginning of a war, and I was terrifyingly outnumbered. But as I felt a tiny kick beneath my palm, I knew one thing for certain. I would fight with everything I had. For myself and for my baby. The real battle was just beginning. The courthouse loomed before me, its imposing facade a stark reminder of the battle ahead. My hand rested protectively on my now prominent belly as I took a deep breath, steeling myself for the final showdown. "You ready?" Sarah asked, squeezing my arm reassuringly. I nodded, unable to speak past the lump in my throat. As we climbed the steps, I spotted Charlie, Ava, and Karen huddled together, their faces set in grim determination. My lawyer, Amanda, met us at the entrance. "Remember," she whispered, "stay calm, no matter what they say. We have the law on our side." The courtroom was a blur of polished wood and hushed voices. As the judge entered, I felt the weight of my future and my child's pressing down on me. "Your Honor," Karen's lawyer began, his voice dripping with false concern, "we're simply asking for reasonable visitation rights for the father and grandmother of this unborn child. Miss Thompson's attempts to exclude them from the baby's life are vindictive and not in the child's best interest." I clenched my fists, fighting the urge to scream. Amanda stood, her voice steady and clear. "Your Honor, my client has valid concerns about Mr. Thompson and his mother's involvement in her child's life. Their past actions, including Mr. Thompson's infidelity and Mrs. Karen Thompson's role in facilitating it, demonstrate a clear disregard for Ms. Rebecca Thompson's well-being." The arguments went back and forth. each word a dagger to my heart. I watched Charlie's face, searching for any sign of the man I once loved, but all I saw was a stranger, his eyes cold and determined. Finally, the judge spoke. "I've heard enough. Given the circumstances and the evidence presented, I'm granting full custody to Miss Rebecca Thompson. Mr. Charlie Thompson will pay child support as outlined in the agreement. As for visitation rights, they will be at Miss Thompson's discretion, with the option for review in 1 year's time." The courtroom erupted in chaos. Karen leapt to her feet, her face contorted with rage. "This is an outrage! You can't keep me from my grandchild!" "Order!" the judge bellowed, banging his gavel. As the bailiff moved to restrain Karen, Charlie stood, his eyes meeting mine. For a moment, I saw a flicker of the man I once knew, regretful, maybe even a little lost. But then Ava touched his arm, and the moment was gone. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed us. Amanda fielded their questions while Sarah ushered me to the car. As we drove away, the enormity of what had just happened washed over me. "It's over," I whispered, tears streaming down my face. "We won." Sarah smiled, squeezing my hand. "You won, Rebecca. You fought for yourself and your baby, and you won." The next few months passed in a whirlwind of preparation. As my due date approached, I found myself reflecting on the journey that had brought me here. The pain, the betrayal, the fear, it had all led to this moment. When the first contraction hit, I was ready. Hours later, as I held my daughter in my arms for the first time, I felt a love so fierce it took my breath away. "Hello, Lily," I whispered, tracing her tiny features with my finger. "It's just you and me, sweetheart, but we're going to be okay." As Lily grew, so did I. Each milestone, her first smile, her first steps, her first word, was a reminder of my strength. The woman who had once felt broken and betrayed was gone, replaced by someone stronger, wiser, and fiercely protective. Charlie tried to reach out a few times, but I held firm to the boundaries I'd set. Karen's attempts at reconciliation were met with the same resolve. This was my family now, small but mighty. On Lily's 5th birthday, as I watched her blow out her candles surrounded by friends and chosen family, I realized something profound. The journey that had once seemed like the end of my world had actually been the beginning of something beautiful. I caught my reflection in the window, seeing not just a mother, but a survivor. A woman who had faced her worst fears and come out stronger. As Lily ran to me, her arms outstretched and her face beaming, I knew that every battle, every tear, every moment of doubt had been worth it. This was our happily ever after, hard-won and precious. And as I hugged my daughter close, I silently thanked the woman I used to be for fighting so hard to become the woman I am now.